broken? Okay, let's go. Let's start. Okay. There are four things that are said on Shabbos. Two of them in the Torah and two from the rabbis. What are these four things? And they are clear in the prophets. The Torah says, Zachor and Shamor. Remember the Shabbos and guard the Shabbos. And the prophets say, Kavod and Oneg. Kavod and Oneg means honor the Shabbos and enjoy the Shabbos. As it says, you should call the day of Shabbos a day of pleasure, to sanctify and honor God. What does it mean to honor the Shabbos? The rabbis say it's a mitzvah before Shabbos to take a shower, wash your face and feet, hands and feet. An honor to go into Shabbos clean. You should wear your talis and sit seriously preparing to, or wear tzitzis and sit seriously preparing to welcome the Shabbos, like going to greet the king. The rabbis would gather on Erev Shabbos and they would put on their talis and they say, let's go out to the fields and welcome the Shabbos king. You should wear clean clothing. You shouldn't wear the same thing on Shabbos you wear on the weekdays. And if you don't have anything to wear, then you can you should change your cloak so it's different on Shabbos. Ezra, the scribe, so Ezra the scribe, after the Babylonian exile for 70 years, about 2,500 years ago, Ezra the scribe, he brought the Jewish people back and he made all sorts of new rules for them, because they basically 70 years they assimilated really bad. So one of the things he said is you can't do the laundry. You shouldn't do the laundry on Shabbos, on Friday. You should do it on Thursday. You should do the laundry on Thursday so you'll have clean clothing when you come to Shabbos. You cannot, you shouldn't eat like a big meal Friday afternoon. However, you're allowed to eat a big meal until it's dark. But nevertheless, a person should try not to eat from the time of Mincha, which is a certain time of the day, until Shabbos, in order that when Shabbos comes and he eats food on Shabbos, he'll be like excited to eat for Shabbos. A person should set up his table on Erev Shabbos, even if he only is going to eat a little bit. He should set up his table, and he should set up his table after Shabbos, because we want to honor, like Shabbos is like the Shabbos energy comes in, we want to honor it. When it leaves, we want to be malavid. We want to like walk out with the king. You should clean up your house, Erev Shabbos. You should have candles lit Friday night, a set table, your bed should be set. These are all considered factors in honoring the Shabbos. Even though a person is very, very important and a very wealthy or whatever it is, aristocratic, and he doesn't buy things from the store and he doesn't work on his house, everything is hired work, he should still do things for Shabbos, because that's the way you honor Shabbos. In the Talmud, it goes through many rabbis who were like big rabbis, but they would sweep the floor, chop wood, cook something, because they wanted to do that mitzvah of honoring the Shabbos, even though it was like beneath their honor. And they could have had many people do it for them. And everyone who does more of that, that is considered honorable. So even big rabbis would do like simple things of cleaning to honor the Shabbos. What is pleasure on Shabbos? The rabbis say you have to have good fatty food, flavorful drinks, everything for Shabbos according to your financial ability. Anyone who spends extra on Shabbos and he puts extra food, this is praiseworthy. Now let's say he can't afford it. Even if he does one cooked thing for Shabbos, this is considered pleasure on Shabbos. You don't have to push yourself and ask money from people in order to get food on Shabbos. The rabbis say you can make your Shabbos like a weekday day food and not need other people. However, someone who's someone who wants pleasure and he's wealthy and all his days are like Shabbos, he has to add extra on Shabbos. Let's say you eat really good food and everything the whole week. So on Shabbos you get some more expensive food. And if you can't change, you should at least change the time you're eating. If you usually eat earlier, eat later. If you usually eat early, eat early. You have to show something special of the Shabbos meals. A person has to eat 3 meals on Shabbos. You eat one at night, one in the morning, and one in the afternoon at mincha time. You have to be very careful with these things. You shouldn't have anything less. Even a poor person who's getting money from the charity, he should make sure he has money from the charity to eat 3 meals. If you're very, very sick because you ate so much, or you're fasting, then you don't have to eat them. You should eat all 3 meals. You should eat wine and have 2 challahs, 2 breads, and similarly in the holidays. When you eat meat and drink wine on Shabbos, this is a mitzvah, and that's as long as you can afford it. You cannot have a meal on wine on Shabbos. during the time of study. This was the custom of righteous people. They would pray in the shul, then they would go eat, and then they would go back and study until mincha. Then they would pray mincha, and then they would go and eat their meal on wine and bread, and they would eat until the end of Shabbos. A person cannot go on Erev Shabbos more than 3 parsais. So this is an interesting law from the beginning of the day, in order that you should be able to come home and still have time and prepare for Shabbos, because people do not know what's going to happen. So basically, or do not know that he's going to come today to prepare for him. So wherever you're going to be on Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, in old days they didn't have cell phones, so you shouldn't travel too far. So you'll arrive somewhere and they'll be like, "What? We didn't know you're coming here. We need food for you, or we need a bed for you." So or your family might say, "Oh, we didn't know you're going to get home before Shabbos." Back then it was common you get stuck at work or stuck somewhere. We don't for sure if you're staying by someone else that you'll be embarrassed. They'll be embarrassed that they didn't prepare for you. You should make sure that you're there early enough they can prepare for you. You shouldn't fast and cry on Shabbos, even if it's a terrible thing happening. You don't blow the shofar and you don't fast on the holidays, except for an area that's just surrounded by Gentiles that's under siege, or a river that is, or a boat which is going to sink. That you can pray on Shabbos extra to save them. You shouldn't put a siege on Gentiles more than 3 days, less than 3 days before Shabbos, in order that you should be ready to return for Shabbos. And you shouldn't go into a boat less than 3 days before Shabbos, in order that you should be relaxed during Shabbos. You shouldn't be too stressed out. You should go, but for a mitzvah, you can even go on Friday, and you can stop on Shabbos. If you are, however, places that you don't go on Erev Shabbos, that you don't need to go, or a tradition that you don't go on Friday onto a boat. We're talking about a boat trip like a cruise. So like if you're going on a cruise, you should go on the cruise at least 3 days before Shabbos. And if you're on the boat on Shabbos, you'll be okay. Marital relations is part of the pleasure of Shabbos, and therefore Torah scholars who are healthy every Friday night, they would have relations. Even if she was a virgin. Now a virgin, after you get married, it's like somewhat painful for her, but you're still allowed to have relations. Shabbos and idolatry, each one of them is equal in the Torah. And Shabbos, so they're equated. Shabbos and idolatry are equated in the Torah in their stringency. And Shabbos is the sign between God and between us forever. And therefore, anyone who goes against any of the mitzvahs, he is sinning. However, if you do go against Shabbos in public, this is like idolatry. Therefore, the prophet said, "Fortunate is the guy who does this. He keeps Shabbos. And anyone who keeps Shabbos properly and he honors it and he has pleasure, it says that the reward is very, very much." Okay, that's the end of the laws of Shabbos. Let's study Talmud. Any questions? So yeah, there's 2 parts of Shabbos. One part of Shabbos is the laws, and the other part is the honor of Shabbos. And you can have people who focus on the laws and they don't honor the Shabbos. Now, interestingly, the Rambam doesn't bring in the halakha, but I think it's an interesting halakha. The Rambam says, let's say you don't have any money for Shabbos. Should you borrow money? So the rule is, and this is a very fascinating rule, the rule is if you have collaterals that you can put, like you don't have any money, but you have a table, right? And you could technically sell the table. So the Talmud says you should borrow money, and it will not be part of your money allotment, financial allotment of that year. So on Rosh Hashanah, God allots how much finances you'll make on Rosh Hashanah. However, your Shabbos money that you spend on Shabbos is not included in that allotment. The Talmud says, that God says, "Loive borrow, v'ani yishalim," and I will pay. God says, "I will pay." So let's say God allots you $100,000 for the year. Whatever you spend on Shabbos is not included in that allotment. And there are many, many Jewish people that you'll meet in the Jewish communities who are poor, but on Shabbos they have incredible food and it's incredibly lavish. And they'll tell you, oh yeah, for years we never had a problem covering that bill. It always came in a random way. Okay, that's we're holding on page. Page 30. Page 38. 38.
Wow. Open to 38.
Nice. Well, you're on the Hebrew side.
Oh, well.
You could stay on the Hebrew side.
Okay. Let me get it. That's so funny.
So we're saying different statements from Rabbi Chelbo. He was a third-generation Babylonian Amora who went to Israel, and he was the primary student of Rav Huna. So, okay. V'amar Rabbi Chelbo, we're at the last paragraph on the page of 38. Rabbi Chelbo said, that Rav Huna said, Kol she'yedei b'chaver shu ragalit l'shalom, yaktim l'shalom. One who is aware that another person is accustomed to greet him is not only obligated to return his greeting, but he must greet him first. As it says, seek peace and pursue it. And if someone says hello and you don't say hello back and you know he's going to greet you, it's considered as if you are a thief. The only way to steal from a pauper who knows nothing is to rob him of his dignity by refusing to greet him. So anyways, that's interesting law. Okay, now top of page 39. Amar Rav Yochanan Minayin she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu mispalo. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Yosef, how do we know that God prays? So we pray, right? But God also prays. Right? How do we know that God prays? Shenemar, it says in the verse, V'havi Yosef al har kodshi. V'simachti v'estfalasi. God says, I will bring them to my holy mountain and make them joyful in the house of my prayer. So God says, this is a promise in Isaiah. God will bring us to Jerusalem, and they will give sacrifices in the house of my prayer. They will be joyful in the house of my prayer. So what does that mean, the house of my prayer? The verse does not say in the house of their prayer, right? It should be the house of the Jewish people's prayer. It says in the house of my prayer. From here we derive that the Holy One, blessed be He, prays. So what does that mean, the Holy One, blessed be He, prays? So, my Mitzali, what does he pray? Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amar Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said in the name of, this is what God prays. Yehiratzin Milfanai. God says, may it be my will before me, Sheyichvashu Rachamai Eska Asai, that my mercy prevail over the other attributes through which Jewish people are punished. So sometimes Jewish people are worthy of the punishment. But God says, may it be my will, may my mercy prevail, and I not destroy. And so my mercy will overcome my anger, and my mercy prevail over my other attributes through which the Jewish people are punished. And I will conduct myself towards my children with the attribute of mercy. And may I enter before them beyond the letter of the law. So even though Jewish people are sometimes worthy of punishment, and we sometimes get hardship or whatever it is, God actually prays. He says, hopefully we'll make it through and it will come out in a good way. All right, you got that? Now here's a fascinating story. There's actually a very popular Jewish song based on this story. Tanya, it was taught in a brisa. Amar Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha was the high priest for many years in the Second Temple. Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha was a high priest. Now I want to note that most high priests would die on Yom Kippur. Every year a new high priest would die on Yom Kippur during the Second Temple, because they weren't very holy. He was one of the only ones who was high priest for like 40 years. So he was really righteous. So now we're getting to Yom Kippur. So what did he see in Yom Kippur? So Yom Kippur was the only day of the year there was a section called the Holy of Holies in the temple. And the Kohen Gadol, we read it on Yom Kippur, actually kind of long, we'll read it here. We read the story of the high priest going into the Holy of Holies. So what does he say? Pam achas, one time on Yom Kippur, Nichnasti lahaktir ketaydes lifnai v'lifnim. I entered the innermost sanctum, the Holy of Holies, to offer incense. So that's what the Bible says he has to do, offer incense. He offers incense, goes outside, and it's a very, very deep, probably the holiest moment of the year, is watching the high priest going in to the Holy of Holies. So what does he say he saw? What does he see in the Holy of Holies?
Cloud.
What?
Cloud.
Well, besides
Smoke.
in his era, the ark was not there.
Oh.
But there was the rock of the mountain, the actual mountain is exposed, and you go and that's the place that Adam is created from, and you go and you put this pan of incense that the Bible very, very strictly says how to do. And it was so holy that most Kohanim of his time, of the Second Temple, they would go in and they would just, it was too spiritually powerful for them that they would die. So what does he say? V'ro'isi akasriel. I saw Akatriel Ka, Hashem Tzvakos, the Lord of the hosts, one of the names of God expressing his ultimate authority, seated upon a high and exalted throne. So I saw this imagery of God, which I don't know how to describe, but he was a pretty holy, Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha was a pretty holy guy. So I saw God sitting on his throne. That's what I saw inside there. Va'amar li, and he said to me, Yishmael. He said, Yishmael beni. I said to him, he said, and he said to me, Yishmael, my son, bless me. So God, this revelation, this expression of God, which is called Akasrikel Ka, which is some sort of revelation of God showing his dominance and sitting on the throne. He says, Yishmael, my son, bless me. Amarti loy. Yishmael Kohen Gadol says, Rabbi Yishmael Kohen Gadol says, I said to him, Yiratzim ufanecha, sheyichbeshu rachamecha al kasecha. May it be your will that your mercy overcome your anger. That's what he told God. Your mercy overcome your anger. V'yagoylu rachamecha al midesecha, and your mercy prevails over your attributes. V'sisnai imbanecha, and you act towards your children. V'midas harachamim, with mercy. V'stikanis lahem v'lifnim meshur sadin. And may you act toward your children beyond the letter of the law. May you enter before your children beyond the letter of the law. V'nina li b'raishai. And the Holy One, blessed be He, nodded his head and accepted my blessing. But kamashvalan shayite berkas hedjed kikal benechel. And why did Rabbi Shmuel? What did Rabbi Shmuel want to teach by saying this story? This was such a private, intimate thing that only the high priest of Israel could even imagine. He said, it comes to teach us, Al shalaitiya birkas hedjid kal benecha. If God asks for a man's blessing, and he accepted it, all the more so, we must value another man's blessing. When somebody gives us a blessing, we shouldn't say, it's nothing. He says, no, God asked me for a blessing. I'm human. God is the creator. He asked me for a blessing to teach us that a human's blessing is worth something. Don't think it's nothing. What do you think about that story?
Good.
It's one of the most popular Hebrew songs, actually, is the quotation from this. It's a beautiful story. So he goes into the Holy of Holies, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, and he sees some expression of God.
Okay, that was the question.
And God says, bless me. And he says, he says a blessing, and God nods and says, thank you.
He didn't see God. He saw an expression of God. Is that how you...
We always see expressions of God. But there's expressions of God which are hidden, like nature. God is expressing himself through hiding. And there's expressions which are like revealed, like it's like an spiritual imagery of God sitting on a throne, of a king sitting on a throne. So that's...
So I have a dumb question. Why is Yom Kippur considered the holiest of the high holidays?
That's a really good question. So, it's an interesting thing. I always tell everyone the most important day of the whole high holidays is Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah is that's the most important day. But Yom Kippur is definitely, it's the holiest day. Doesn't mean it's the best day. It's the holiest day. Why is it considered the holiest day? So Yom Kippur, in its history, focuses on how God was going to destroy the Jewish people after the story of the golden calf. And he forgave us. And only on Yom Kippur did he fully forgive us. He gave us the second tablets. And what it represents is God kind of undressing everything in the world and showing how the most important thing is to him as a Jewish people, even if we sin. And that's why we undress, when we don't eat on that day, we abstain from everything to just focus on God and say, whatever happened in the past year doesn't matter. We're here with God. We're willing to commit to God again. So it's the most intimate day between God and the Jewish people. God transcends everything bad that we do, everything good that we do. And it's just a day that we kind of peel off all layers and we are just with God and God is just with us. That's what we do on Yom Kippur. So that's why it's the holiest day, because we don't eat, we don't drink, we just go totally with God and God forgives us. And forgiveness means you broke the rules, but there's something about you that's more important to me than the rules. So you have, let's say, mitzvahs during the year. Mitzvahs are the rules. Sometimes we break them. Sometimes, and when we break them, we disconnect with God. But Yom Kippur every year, God says, even though you disconnected from me, you're my children, I'm going to forget about the sins. I'm going to atone all the sins and start again.
Does some of it have to do with Moshe? Like, for example, he pleaded on our behalf. Did God
Absolutely.
forgive us on his merit in the same way he forgave Lot because of Abraham's merit?
Well, different than Lot. Moshe Rabbeinu aroused in God that the most important thing to God is the Jewish people. So if you can imagine, it's like, we misbehave, we break the rule system. And when we do that, it's not good for us, it's not good for God. But every year, God takes a day to focus that there's something that transcends the ruled system. And he clears all our sins. And then we start again. And hopefully we'll be better people after Yom Kippur.
Next time, right?
Okay.
Oh, the priest that entered and didn't, they died. You
Yeah,
said,
so
did
they
they
would-
die inside?
Yeah, they would tie a string to the priest every year.
I had heard that.
And if he would die, they would pull him out. If he didn't come out after a while, they would tie
I
a
can't
string.
see anybody wanting to go. No one can go
It's
in
really
and get
funny.
him.
It's really funny, but even after the priest would die, they would elect a new Kohen every year, and people would fight to it because they wanted to go in there
They
and be
wanted
with
to be
God,
close to God.
But in the first, but really that wasn't ideal. It was because they weren't, only if you were perfectly righteous, not one sin on your plate, would you survive. So that was a normal thing in the first temple, but in the second temple it was very, very rare.
Amazing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yossi, Minayin shein meratz and leilad mishas kasei. From where is it derived that one must not placate a person while he's in his throes of anger?
I'm sorry, miss.
Right? So where do we learn that when someone's angry, you shouldn't try and please him, or you shouldn't, in truth, as in Jewish law, it says you shouldn't say things that won't be listened to. Rather, he should mollify him after he has calmed down. As it is written, when falling into the golden calf, Moses requested that the divine presence rest upon Israel as it did previously. And God said to him, my face will go, and I will give you rest. God said to Moses, wait until my face of wrath will pass, and I will fulfill your request. Right? So we learn that, when someone's angry, you can't really speak to them.
Yeah.
And generally in Jewish law it says when someone's not going to listen to what you say, you shouldn't really tell them. You shouldn't necessarily say, hey, I'm going to say the right thing anyways. If he's not listening, ignore him. Okay, so let's continue on. Okay, the Gemara says, is there anger before God? Can we speak about God using the terms of anger? Can we say God gets angry, loses control, and gets angry? In the Tanya, V'kel zayin b'chol yom. Yes, God vindicates the righteous. God is furious every day. V'kama zamei. And how long does God's anger last? Rega. It lasts one moment. Every day God is angry for one moment. Echad v'kama rega. And how long is a moment?
Yeah.
Echad mechameshes riba yishmeina salafim shmeina meis ushmeina b'shah. V'zuhi rega. 158,888th of an hour. That is how long the moment is. So it's quite a short moment, right?
Very short,
Yeah.
even by our standards.
Yeah. And the Gemara adds, and no one is able to it's too short of a time sequence for humans to be conscious of. Once we say a moment, that's already way longer. Chutz mi Bilam Arasha. There was one human who was able to do it, and his name was Bilam. You know Bilam in the Torah?
Yeah.
So Bilam wanted to curse the Jewish people. He was a non-Jewish idolater prophet. So he wanted to curse the Jewish people. So what did he do? He knew God gets mad one moment a day. During that moment, let me harness that energy and curse it. As it says regarding him, he knows the knowledge of the Most High. So Bilam knew that moment. So he knew that moment, and he knew how to focus during that moment. So he said, let me harness that. During that moment, let me curse the Jewish people. Right? That's what Bilam wanted to do.
That's incredible.
Yeah. This should not be understood to mean that Bilam was full-fledged prophet. Now, Bilam did not know the mind of his animal. Remember, you know the story of Bilam?
Yeah.
So Bilam was basically what happened was the Jewish people, the Jewish people were traveling through the desert, and they were pretty successful in winning wars. After all, they had this great prophet leading them. So the Jewish
Joshua at that time.
no, this is before Joshua. This is the time of Moses.
Still Moses.
So what happened is the Gentiles at the time said, well, we're not going to be able to fight them. Let's get a prophet who can curse them. And that will, so there was one non-Jewish prophet who could curse them. And basically what happened was he goes to curse them, and every time he opens his mouth to curse, tries a few times, he says wonderful blessings to the Jewish people. That's what happens. Amazing, right? So the Talmud says, what exactly was he thinking? Well, this is what he was thinking. So it says he didn't know. Now, on the way there, his animal stopped walking, his donkey. And he started hitting his donkey, and then his donkey actually opened its mouth and said, why are you hitting me? Don't you see there's an angel blocking us? You can't curse, just like I can't speak without God letting me. You also can't speak without God letting you. He tries to curse, and he gives someone the best blessings, and we studied some of them on Fridays. One of his things, they talk about the Mashiach. He talks about the Mashiach in the Torah. So he didn't know what animal was thinking. How could he know what God is thinking? Rather, this verse from Numbers teaches us that Bilam was able to determine the exact moment that God was angry. And he said, let me catch God during that moment, harness that energy, and I'll be able to curse the Jewish people during that exact moment. This is what the prophet Micah says. My nation, remember what Balak, king of Moab, advised, and how Bilam, the son of Bor, responded from Shittim to Gilgal, so that you know the righteous acts of the Lord. What is meant? So you know the righteous acts of the Lord. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Lama Kadosh Baruch Yisrael. Du kamen tzedakah esasisi machav shlekastim me Bilam arasha. Shemalika astin le'nishtar misenem shel Yisrael sarei palim. God says to the Jewish people, I get angry for one moment every day. That day, I didn't get angry. If I would have got angry, I would have destroyed the Jewish people. Because Bilam would have harnessed that energy of God's anger against the Jewish people, and it would have destroyed the Jewish people. But God says, know how much I love you, that even though that's my regular daily schedule, I didn't let the enemies of Israel touch you. This is what it says, how can I curse who God didn't curse? How can I condemn who God didn't condemn? This teaches us that God was not angry those days. See, God God, uh, gets angry like a father, right? But it's all to get us to get closer to Him. It's all part of our relationship. When He shows anger, He shows us we're important to Him. He would never get upset. We would say like, "Oh, whatever we do is meaningless."
Would we feel God's anger in that moment?
Yeah, sometimes it's not necessarily God is a rageaholic, loses control. Just God likes to show us that our mitzvahs and our life is important to Him. Like if there was someone you love and they did something really bad to you, and you say, "Oh, don't worry, it's nothing." You're essentially insulting them. You're saying you don't matter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't. So God always likes to tell us, likes to remind us, no, I get upset. What you do matters to me. Right? What you do matters to me. So God basically bill them on that. They said, wait, God gets upset at the Jewish people. Let me harness and I'll curse the Jewish people right that, and I'll pull God's anger into the world and destroy the Jewish people. But God said, no, that's not the point of the anger. He said, I'm not going to get angry that day. And He didn't get angry, so Bilam's curse didn't work out. V'kama zoyame, how long does anger last? We're quoting from another source, Rega, a moment. Kama Rega, Rabbi Avim itim Rabbi Avina Rega kamemra. How much is a Rega? As long as it takes the word to say Rega. The word Rega, that's how long it is. How do we know that God only gets angry for a moment? As it says, His anger is but a moment, His favor for a lifetime. Hide yourself for a brief moment until the anger passes. Ve'ema, that's what Isaiah says. Ve'ema rasach, when the Holy One, blessed be He. The Gemara asks, when is the Holy One, blessed be He, angry? Abaye says, God's anger is revealed through animals. During the first 3 hours of the day, when the sun whitens the crest of the rooster. So we'll read what that means. And it stands on one leg. When it appears that its life is left and suddenly turns white, that is when God gets angry.
Holy moly.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what that means, but that's what we can see the crest of the rooster in the picture on the side. Beautiful.
Well, now that would happen at a certain time in the morning.
Yeah, a certain time in the morning for one
roosters
moment.
Get up.
For a certain time in the morning, for one moment, God gets angry. Yeah, that's what it is.
Interesting.
Okay. Now here's what they ask. The Gemara asks, Kol shaita b'shaita nami kayachi. The rooster also stands that way every hour. What kind of sign is this? Kol shaita is v'shiraiki sumaki. The difference is every hour the rooster stands, there are red streaks in its crest. But he shaita, when God is angry, there are no red streaks. There are no red streaks in its crest. We'll finish off with this story. There was a heretic who lived in Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who was one of the greatest rabbis in the Talmud's neighborhood. And he would set him incessantly, challenging the legitimacy of verses. He'd always come to this rabbi and say, what does this mean? This is wrong. One day Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi took a rooster and placed it between the legs of his bed, upon which he sat and he looked at it. Savar, he taught. Kimata hi shaita al taye. When the moment of God's anger arrives, I will curse this heretic. Kimata hi shaita nayim. When the moment God's anger arrived, Rabbi Yeshua fell asleep. When he woke up, he said to himself, Shema mina lav erech ar lemevet hachi. So he found out, like Bilam, the exact moment. Oh, let me hold the rooster and watch the rooster. I'll know where to curse this guy I dislike. But he fell asleep. So you learn from there, this isn't proper conduct. God has mercy on all his creations. Punishment even for righteous, it's not good. So even righteous people should never punish people. Should never punish people. Leave it up to God. So we'll stop there. That was the end of that story there. I don't want to know what it means the crest becomes white. I don't know if it's a spiritual thing that you can see in a chicken or a physical thing. I never had chickens, or I never analyzed them at that hour in the morning. You know, I never watched them the whole hour in the morning. You have chickens? Oh, you have chickens now?
Yes. Well, keep an eye on